Palmer, sometime in the patron questions channel, asked, "What question do you most want to ask each other?" Last week we all collectively came up with a question for Opti. We need to pick another person and come up with a question for them.
Speaking of which, that answer was up, and now we are making it unlisted because there was a lot of swear words in it. So I think we might make that a Patreon exclusive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We run a tight ship.
Yeah.
Do we have a person? Are we just going to go like round robin? Because I'm curious about Cliff's music writing process.
Let's go with that. Okay. So let's refine that question a little bit. What do you want to know about the process?
Every musician has a different way of approaching composition. I myself tend to go with lyrics first, but also like I have a really awkward time putting music to them. So when I start with music, it never goes as well. So I have a really hard time with that. And so Cliff is pretty prolific as far as getting music out there. I'm curious as to how he does it.
So where does it start? From spark to finish?
From spark to finish. I hate you.
Do I start answering now, or are you guys still talking about stuff?
Here, let's refine it let's also add a tabletop something to it. So how would you say maybe that same inspiration crosses over into your tabletopping, your GMing?
That's a weird way to ask that question.
Yeah, that's weird.
So I'm gonna change the question like I did last week, which is I'll make it about Cliff. You've written music for the actual play we did, for other people's actual plays, for
Optiverse. He did the theme for Optiverse.
People have asked. You've done a lot of music intended to be for tabletop games. So if somebody says to you, "Hey, I've got an actual play. I want you to make me a theme song for it or some kind of music for it." How do you go about accomplishing that task? Like how do you start? What do you do? Where do you get your ideas and inspiration? Stuff like that.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of questions there. I'll start with the process-based ones. How do you start approaching writing a song or a piece of music? That's such a personal musician question. That's different for everybody. And my short answer might sound a little bit like a cop-out in that it's different for almost every song. In some cases, usually I will say that I start with some sort of a musical idea that I get in my head and I try to translate, and then it doesn't quite come out the same, but then I get inspirations off of that and it kind of builds and grows. My actual technical process is I use a program called Bitwig Studio, which is it's a DAW, digital audio workstation, basically a music making and recording program. It's really, really good because it's got some really nice workflow stuff. You can work with music in smaller chunks and then rearrange them on the fly pretty easily. I find it really easy to, when I'm recording a piece, I'll start recording like a clip while I'm listening to something else that I've already recorded, like a scratch drum beat or maybe some ideas that I've already put down. And I'll let that loop for a while, maybe 8 bars or 16 bars or 4 bars, depending on what I've got. And then I'll play something along to it and I'll try to get it right. But I'll also let myself jam a little bit. And then I'll go back over it and find the parts I like the most and just crop it to those and make use of those and maybe make those better. And arrange them into an overall piece. But largely, I depend a lot on getting some sort of spark of inspiration started somehow. One of the other ways I'll often approach is by messing around with one of my software synths like Omnisphere that has a huge library of sounds. And I'll just go through different sounds, and noodle around with them. And sometimes I'll find one that I'm jamming on for a while, and I'm like, okay, I've got something to start with. So I've started a few songs that way. Other times, I'll be challenged by someone else and have some external input, and that's where I'll dovetail with Bobby's question about approaching, say, making music for an actual play.
Yeah, that was it.
I've done this a couple times, once for complex action, which I don't think we actually ended up doing that or using that. You used something else, but then the music that I made for that ended up fitting really well with my Pirates actual play campaign.
There was something going
which is
on, and you
a
ended.
Ecology Patron exclusive.
Yeah, it just took a while,
Yeah.
I think, for you to get the song done, and so I had already picked something, and I didn't feel like changing it, I guess, in the middle or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't end up reaching for the tone, but I recently had someone hire me to write something for a Shadowrun podcast, and they wanted something kind of hip hop and Cowboy Bebop inspired, and that is so far outside of my comfort zone. So it stretched me to work in a completely different genre in a totally different way, using chunks of sampled audio and making those work together. And oh, it turned out so good. I'll have to tell people what the podcast is and when it comes out. I don't actually know what the name of the podcast will be. I don't think they've released their first episode yet. But that was a lot of fun, and it ended up being very jazzy and fit the Cowboy Bebop theme very well.
Cool.
So also doing music for Rem Alternis and some of the music for their intro videos, and then also for the actual video itself that they produced with the Kickstarter project. That stretched me in different directions as well, creating music that would go along with a visual presentation, having that like drum beat and nasty like disturbing riff line up with the person getting decapitated, or the character like rising with power and unexpectedly striking back with a lightning bolt before she gets killed. A few other moments. It was so hard to make that come together, especially when it was during the midst of my depression burnout phase I was well caught up in earlier this year. And I'm sorry, Oz, I forgot your part of the question.
My question sucked. Don't worry about it.
Well, Bobby refined it in a way that.
Yeah, I just changed it. I
wanted mine to be like just to like bring in the tabletop aspect of it, and the only thing I could think of was like, does that somehow influence your GMing?
Not so much, no, but I will add that I've composed quite a few songs for the express purposes of having them be good background music for an actual play that's live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting, different way of approaching. You want a longer piece that evolves over a long period of time. And it has to be interesting enough so that you don't have this annoying repetitiveness or just dull stuff that you forget and doesn't impact anything. It has to convey some sort of emotional effect, but not specific enough that it overrides the scene that your GM has planned. And it has to have enough going on musically to be interesting, but not so much that it creeps up and starts obscuring the voices or drawing attention away from the story. It should become subconscious background emotion. And I feel like I've achieved that with a few pieces, and I'm really pleased with them. And I invite anyone to use them in their own streams or podcasts, because I hate the copyright system. Everything I put out there, it's under Creative Commons license, so you can use it without getting a copyright strike or whatever. Ideally, you give me credit, but I'm not going to go after people who don't. Just use it if you want it. It's out there for free. SoundCloud.com/Prism Shard. There's a hyphen between Prism and Shard there. I really enjoy making music to go with role-playing games. That was something I stumbled upon. I'm not quite sure how, but I found it really inspiring, and I'm really proud of the work I did in that front. And then, of course, there's Farley Cobra.
Farley Cobra, bang, 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 bang.
Which I think is still a patron exclusive.
It is. I haven't released it any other way yet.
So
that said, the Mech Warrior Destiny campaign, it might pop up in the background for that, because that's actually, I feel like I reached a certain point as a role-playing game musician when I put together the soundtrack of music for the MechWarrior Destiny live actual play, and I didn't have to pull any music from any sources that weren't written
Nice.
Oh man,
out the whole
achievement
playlist. That's cool.
unlocked.
by me, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, I
So
frequently I
fulfilling
like a
process.
lot of your I guess background or ambiance stuff that you do. I've used it-
Ambient music.
Yeah, I've used it. I've used it before as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent point. Like, you want to make sure that it's not distracting, but it creates emotion without being that kind of like up and down. You can't have that because sometimes what's happening in the scene is not what's actually happening in the song.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
like
need to keep it-
intense. It's like an intense moment, and you're all sitting there, and then suddenly, like the music is intense.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da!
Yeah, it's why you can't use movie soundtrack stuff as much because like the strikes that come in, like they don't match your tension with role-playing game background
Right.
music. Each song has to be its own one mood.
Yeah.
And then if you want a mood to change, the person who's DJing the soundtrack, they change to a different track.
Yeah.
That's how that happens. At least with the mindset I've been going with.
I think you're totally
Yeah.
right about that.
Yeah. Whenever I DJ stuff for any tabletop RPG, I mark all of them by a mood or like or a type of scene or location that I think this matches. But I never do anything that's like, especially not movie soundtracks. You're right; they're just way too all over the place.
Good.
Also, with the movie
Question.
soundtracks, they tend to be like, "Oh, this is the theme from Star Wars." Now I'm thinking about Star Wars instead of what.
Oh
we're doing.
yeah.
I
Great
was
fit for a
watching,
Star Wars game, but sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was watching there's YouTube videos of these two twins that watch music videos and then react to them. I don't know if you guys have seen this.
Love
They-
React
they-
videos.
What's that?
Nothing. I was being sarcastic.
Okay.
Keep
Anyway,
going.
it's just two brothers who watch young kids who watch old music videos and they react to them. And they were watching Cult of Personality by Living Color. And which is one of my favorite songs of all time. Like that song just rules.
It's a good song.
But the minute it started playing, one of the kids goes, "Oh, that reminds me of this. This wrestler like uses this as their theme song," and that's all they talked about the entire time. Like I was like what a waste. because they couldn't think about anything else.
yeah.
It sort of took the mood away from experiencing it for the first time, which is the whole point of their channel.
If you started a campaign with the dramatic music of the opening tune to Morrowind, I would be thinking about how much I want to go home and play Morrowind.
Yeah.
right. Right.